Hello.
Hi,
Welcome to another episode of Film Critters Processes.
Film Critters Processes.
Today we're talking about the movie that everyone has been processing for a month.
Literally everybody has been talking about this movie, and now we are too. I'm Baru,
I'm Jay Bearhat.
and we are going to be your co-pilots for this discussion, this roundtable discussion.
For this wonderful trip down the mommy issues movie.
The mommy issues lane. So Jay Bearhat,
Yes.
what were your thoughts on Hereditary?
Whew. No, really good actually. We did that other video recently, and I talked about how I tend to really hate critically acclaimed horror films. And like going in, I was like, oh, this is gonna be like The Quiet Place or like Annihilation or something. And then like I came out feeling like I got like punched in the solar plexus by like my 12th grade bully.
Yeah, that's basically how I felt. I really was kind of struck by like how like you said, like the sort of thing where like even with A24 films, like which is the production company behind this movie, like I've had kind of mixed successes with them and just mixed successes with art horror films as a general concept, and this didn't quite so much. It escaped that like lens for me because it didn't feel like a movie. It just kind of felt like water torture.
Yeah.
Right? Like where it was just someone just holding your head down in a bath for the last half of that movie and some before.
It's what I like is that like everyone talks about like, you know, like the scene that like is like, you know, in every interview the director's like, yep, that was like the scene where I planned it as like, oh, this isn't, you're not watching a movie that like you're used to seeing. This is my movie, motherfucker. But it's still just like, I remember leading up to that scene, I was like, oh, this movie's like really interesting. Like this movie's doing things that like I did not expect it to do. I'm really liking this. And then that scene happened and I was just like, oh no. I was like, oh no, this movie,
Oh, fuck.
everything that I was like, oh, I like this. I'm like, oh, I don't like this anymore. This isn't fun.
I do want to get off the ride at this point, please. Yeah, that's like exactly my reaction. Just like, really, we're here now. Like this is happening. So obviously, if you're listening to this, we are going to spoil the film. Yeah. If you haven't seen it, I highly, I
would recommend it if you. Even the director has been like, I think this is like, I'm really proud of this movie, obviously, but like, I'm aware that there are people who this kind of stuff is going to hit too close to home, and like, please prioritize taking care of yourself rather than seeing like a film that is part of the conversation. Because he's like, this movie I drew from really dark places on. I know it has the ability to affect people and put them in dark places. If you have any sort of like intense family trauma, especially around like parents, especially around mentally ill parents, not even just mentally ill parents, but just like unstable or like hostile or controlling parents, and engaging with art that deals with those themes very, very rawly is not something you can do. Just read the synopsis.
Yeah, just read the Wikipedia.
Read the Wikipedia page. It's a great film and it's really powerful, but do not like self-harm yourself for the sake of consuming art.
And I also want to make it clear, like, yes, if you're the type of person who usually finds value in content warnings, which, you know, to some degree, I'm also that type of person, and I think we all are. It is not something to kind of, it is not something to feel bad that you are missing out on, because like, for reasons that I will kind of get into once we're into spoiler territory, I think that there is, like more than just the actual physical, like not the physical, but like the actual content of the movie and like what you see on the screen. There is like a level of sort of cynicism that's being played with by the film as a whole. So don't see it if you don't need to.
The film, to like kind of just get directly into like the I guess a big spoiler in general for the film. The film is like existential horror, and that like kind of the big theme of it is this idea that like you can't escape the fate that your family gave you. And that's why I really liked the film, because it's like, to me, it's not even that it's cathartic. It's like, it's miserable, but it's like, that's what made it a really effective horror, is that it's like, wow, you really tapped into like what people who come from shitty families or shitty backgrounds or like have a history of like mental illness or cyclical abuse in their family fear, which is that like, there's nothing I can do to escape that fate.
Absolutely. And I think that, so I definitely want to circle back and just be like really, really, really into the nitty gritty of this stuff. I did just rewatch NIC Spheres video on Hereditary, which I highly, highly recommend.
We're gonna put a link down below.
Yeah.
I pointed down at the ground, even though I'm literally not on camera.
I mean, we're going to put. I'm going to drop a link on the floor, and for you to, I don't know. Anyway, it's a really good video. It's a fun like take on the video that really kind of helps to contextualize some of the more subtle is the wrong word when we're
It's
talking
not a very
about
subtle film,
Hereditary.
yeah.
But some of the more things, some of the more
Denser,
subtextual elements of the movie. My reading of the movie on a much more surface level is that it's actually like really fucking well done. Like that's when I my first reaction coming out of the movie was it's incredibly directed. The opening shot is really, really good.
It's a gorgeous movie, which makes it much more upsetting.
Yes. And this also like what was the sort of surface level reaction of a lot of people that I went to see the movie with, because we went with like a big group.
We all in a huge group.
And basically like the sort of the way that the horror elements in the film are framed, it really I had come out with the impression that this movie, this is another point of contention with people who I've talked about the movie with who haven't seen it yet. Is there like a jump scare in the movie? I contend that the movie does the opposite of jump scares, where it kind of lets you sit with something and then it sucks the air out of the room and just like moves to the next scene. And then that sort of like, you know how like when you punch someone, what really matters is when you pull away.
Yeah.
That's what I felt that the movie was doing, was kind of emphasizing like the space around the things that are scary is really kind of like the bread to the sandwich, really. Like it helped.
There's I think a great example of like that kind of horror in just like a single scene is there's like a moment in the film that didn't act as a jump scare, but it was something where it's like, it's the scene when the teenage boy, like the son wakes up and he's just like in his room because he heard noise and he's just kind of like looking around, and like while you're watching it, you're just like, okay, what's going on? The shot is framed and you're expecting that something is gonna like appear in frame and scare you. And then you realize that there's been something in frame the entire time.
Yes.
And so like the moment you notice it, like it's like a jump scare, but it's not because it's actually a jump scare. It's just because you're so anticipating something to show up, and then for there to have been something there the entire time and for you to recognize it.
Yeah.
Because the way the space is structured in that shot, like your eyes aren't going to go to where it is immediately. They're going to go to like the right, expecting something to enter from that frame. You're like, okay, so you kind of like lazily float back, and then you see it and you're like,
yes.
Ah!
Yes,
You, to quote the old meme, when you see it, you shit bricks.
Oh, yes, that actually, yeah. This movie really draws on that principle.
Yeah.
Like the SCP wiki.
The old red circle, got you. The scary thing is outside of the red circle.
It's actually a movie that takes place in the SCP universe, it turns out. No, yeah. We talked about that afterward. As far as kind of the sort of like, I'm sorry if you don't like talking movie shot, but like long shots used in horror needs to happen more. And this movie is a really good missive for that. And moreover, like when it went to the kind of the closer shot on the son, and like basically right after the shot that Jay is describing, there's another shot where the mom bounds out of the room in complete silence with her like whatever pajamas or like shirt that she's wearing is just trailing behind her in this like really sort of ghostly sort of like way. But the thing of course about it is like they could have very easily put like a musical sting that like shocks you, but like they don't. It's complete silence still like throughout that whole part.
Yeah. Oh god, it's so good.
It's so good.
It was weird. Like when I came out of that movie, I was like, one of my biggest thoughts after like kind of like it setting in was like, man, I can't wait to see that again. But I was like, I'm gonna wait.
I'm gonna take a Xanax.
But like
two.
now that I know what I'm going in for next time, I can't wait to watch it and really like appreciate just how beautifully constructed it is and all these things. Because there's like a bunch of stuff I like was catching like super early on, and then like was able to reintegrate that later and be like, oh, that's like a really clever like little thing that they did. But also, like, in those moments, I couldn't really think too clearly about that because I'm just like, oh my fucking god, the fuck's gonna happen now? I don't like that. Oh, I don't like any
I
of
hate
this.
this. I hate
I
this. I
hate
hate
this.
this. I hate this. I
Where
hate
the
this. I
fuck is
hate
this
this.
gonna go?
Yeah, a more detached reading, I think would be be really useful, because basically the first time I watched it, I was just traumatized, like the whole duration, basically. Um, but yeah, and yeah, and of course, what we were talking about before, like that's the big draw of the movie, is that it's got really wonderful characterization and really great acting.
Yeah, I was genuinely shocked at how good the performances are. And there were performances that I feel like in another movie would have been maybe like weaker, but like are deployed to great like effect here.
Yes.
Specifically like the father, where like the father just seems kind of like annoyed and detached a lot of the film. And then there's that one scene when he like almost pulls into traffic and like freezes, and it's like he just starts breaking down sobbing. And
Oh,
that scene is so good because it immediately makes it clear every scene you've been seeing him where he just seems like annoyed or like pissed off or kind of like fed up
yeah.
is because he has become the only person in the family who can do all these things that need to be done in the like in the face of great tragedy, and it's like been eating away at him in this entire time. And then in that moment where he realizes that he almost just caused another tragedy in his family, it's just like that's him snapping and being like, this can't all be on me.
Oh yeah, that's God. It's really, really good. Like
It's so good.
the
It's
depth of the characterization is like it really deserves to be applauded. I don't know. I'm like very not emotionally sensitive, but just like quality wise, like the quality of the portrayal of a mother is something that I'm like hypersensitive to in movies. Just as a general sense, because like a lot of horror movies talk about mommy issues and stuff.
yeah.
Um, but specifically, something about Toni Collette's character, like there. I wish I could put my finger on it, but you feel as lost as she does.
I think it's because so I feel like the film both forces you to emphasize and be terrified of her character at the same time.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is like definitely supposed to mirror her own alienation from herself and like her own alienation. And like a thing that I really liked in the film that's like a really kind of like subtle running thing in it is like the way she talks about things and like hearing in her voice and in the ways in what she's saying that she's like constructing essentially a narrative to explain things that isn't necessarily like the objective reality of what's going on.
Yes.
Like there's like a thing that like a couple of people I've talked to like about this movie where we've had the contention of the scene where she's like telling the story of the first time she like woke up while sleepwalking and was going to set her kids on fire. And to me, the way she keeps repeating like I was asleep, like I can't, you can't blame me for this. To me, in that moment, it's like, oh, she wasn't asleep.
Yeah.
Like maybe she had some sort of like mental breakdown, maybe she was in like a fugue state, but there was definitely something where she's terrified of the fact that on some conscious level she was about to do this, and that it took the screaming to kind of like bring her to her senses and be like, oh, I can't do this. And so like she has to construct this excuse of like why she ended up in that place, which is, oh, I was sleepwalking. I had no control over myself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like that stuff really, it feels really meaty and real in a way that literally sucks.
Yeah.
Like and the thing that's of course is like difficult about kind of family trauma being touched on in movies is like you have to kind of straddle a line of being too kind of saccharine and too like annoying and inaccurate and cloying versus being just like pounding someone into the ground with what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
And just being and this movie I think, like I said, this does get a little bit more cynical than I would like, but like all of the portrayal of her is it's really sympathetic. It's really, I don't know. It's just really good, and a really well-rounded, understandable characterization of a character who goes through some, as far as just the actual text of the story goes through some shit.
Yeah. No, she goes see basically hell.
Yes.
Going on the cynical thing, that's actually like another thing I feel like we like disagreed on was Charlie.
Yeah.
I know like a lot of people like will be like, oh, I feel like you know like Charlie is kind of abused by the like by the actual narrative of the film, like not just like in terms of like what happens to her, but in terms of like, you know, oh, you're not really supposed to be sympathetic for her, which is weird because I was like really sympathetic and I was thinking about it a
Yes.
bit today. And I think it's not just because like, you know, relatable kid, like the weird kid, but I think it's because like I was thinking back to like a lot of the scenes that she's in, and I feel like the film is very, very pointedly making a point on which the child who most openly reflects the problems of a family becomes essentially a bartering chip in the family that people like use against each other. And so I feel like the film is trying to make a point of like, that sucks. Like Charlie doesn't get to be a kid. She doesn't get to be her own person. And in the film, like literally she doesn't get to be her own person because you find out she's a vessel for a demon as like literally just to placate the demons. Like here, you can have this one until we can get the thing you actually want.
Right.
And that reflects the way she's treated by her entire family.
Yeah, I mean, I think that she she has her place in the story. To make my kind of position on this clear, it, being there are a lot of kids who are in Charlie's position as kind of like the sort of like weird kid who just absolutely like no resources and just doesn't really feel a lot of hope.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a very that's a very relatable position to be in. And I don't think that the middle schoolers who want to see a really fucked up R-rated movie are going to be doing like an in-depth reading of the film or like her placement in the film. I think that it's kind of just like here's like the actress herself is like very, very she's really well spoken and she's really like exuberant and she just loves horror movies. She's basically just a horror junkie.
Yeah. I love that interview. She's just like, no, I was so excited to be in this movie. She's like stoked about it. She's like, this movie was fun. Yeah.
which is so great. I don't know. It's touchy. It's not something that I claim to be an expert on. It's not something that I claim is like a unilaterally bad thing. It's something that I just kind of feel a little bit sensitive to and feel a little bit like, you know, like here's a little girl who is like said to be demon possessed. She is cutting off the heads of pigeons. In real life, it's time for a support network. Like it's time to intervene and like that's the movie also like being such a rough movie touches on how difficult those things are. And how difficult not knowing what to do is in situations like that. So it's your mileage is probably going to vary on that. I'm kind of back and forth on it, to be perfectly honest.
To bring it into the art horror discussion, how do you think it compares to the child from Babadook?
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah, that fucking is such an offensive movie on so many levels.
I fucking like okay. Better than the Babadook. much better than the Babadook.
I think, to be fair, like, I think that's my problem is that like I'm so used to seeing kids who are like weird and dealing with stuff like that just portrayed as universally like an evil thing, that a film that like is attempting to like be like, hey, actually the way she's being treated by like film narratives and also real life narratives, kind of shitty and not fair to her.
Exactly. Yeah, the movie the Hereditary does a pretty good job of like pointing that stuff out. Kind of while it's happening. Oh god, the Babadook. Like, yeah, just basically my biggest problem with the Babadook is that like the characterization is just from another fucking planet, which just kind of happens with like a lot of thriller and horror movies that like I don't get it. Like I don't get people who like movies like that. Like Black Swan is like my other kind of go-to example where it's just like this is kind of just a John Waters movie that you like made with a bigger budget.
Yeah,
like,
it's like no, that's actually a great way to describe it, because my biggest problem with the Babadook is that I'm like, this is like consistently a few shades short of being camp, but I'm supposed to take it like really seriously, and like it's kind of just comes off as like really uncomfortable and exploitative because of that.
Yes.
Because it doesn't go far enough for it to feel like unreal, but it definitely doesn't come off like it's made by someone who cares.
Right. Yeah. And this movie, there's a lot of, I would say there's a lot of complexity, but to how, or a lot more complexity to how Hereditary, um, kind of juggles these themes, right? Like Charlie especially is kind of portrayed, and she's not a burden to the family. She's just it's someone who's really difficult to communicate with, difficult to kind of determine, like, help the feeling of like helping a person, specifically a child, with a problem that they don't understand, and that kind of by proxy you don't understand, and then it's kind of like, where do you go from there? And that can really force your mind to like do a whole lot of jumping jacks, which we saw the mom in Hereditary going through.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, that comparison helps me to appreciate Hereditary.
Yeah, that's I think that's probably why, because like when I was walking at it, I was like, it's like, man, I'll get, and then I was like, oh, because like my go to example in these films is always fucking fucking Babadook, which is so awful.
It's trash. I'm sorry.
If you like Babadook, I
Sorry.
don't blame you.
Yeah,
I guess it's just there's just certain things where like I see it and I'm like, oh, this really any pity I would have given you out the window.
Yeah, and like my personal argument, as far as kind of rounding out like my general thoughts on Hereditary, like my personal argument is that Hereditary does not, ironically, like still doesn't meet this my personal standards of like a good sort of conscientious horror movie that is, complex characterization, like all the, like it does so much good that it could still do great, if you know what I mean. Like I don't know. It's hard for me to say like what I would pick and choose and what I would change, because God, it goes in a lot of directions.
Yeah, no, I could see that. Bringing up like the NIC Spheres video again.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why I was like, oh, we should bring that up because I really like that video, but also because like one of the things I really like about it is not so much like her take, which I think is interesting, but it's like the way in which she, as you put it, like builds the scaffolding for it, where it's like reframing Hereditary in a way that I haven't seen a lot of people reframe it, where it's like, instead of, oh, the diorama symbolism is supposed to reflect how like they're trapped in someone else's scheme, essentially, that they have no control over.
Yeah.
But rather, this film is how Toni Collette's character understands the film, because she makes dioramas to attempt to recapture and take control of events that are going on in her life and to understand them. And because this film is proposed as a diorama, this film is Toni Collette's perspective on the literal events that happened.
Yeah. So the thing about that interpretation is that it actually makes me appreciate the movie more, because the idea of Toni Collette's character just like watching her, like seeing her daughter's beheaded body and then immediately like subtweeting her son, like vis-a-vis like a elaborate, like she literally is making in the movie. It is so fucking absurd that she's immediately processing her daughter's death via a diorama.
Yeah. And it's like her husband just walks in and she's just like calmest face in the world, applying the replication of her daughter's blood into the grass.
Like what fucking Twitter, like that, like I don't know, that's a mood. That's like also a mood, but it's also like the most B movie touch of like the whole goddamn thing.
It's such a B movie touch, but I love it. Like I love the exchanges. He's like, what is he gonna see if, like, what is he gonna think if he sees that? And she's like, what? It's not about him. It's an objective recollection of what happened. And I'm just like, that is such a like fucking like, I'm making art that's like definitely about someone else, but I'm pretending that it's not.
That's relatable. That's deeply relatable.
Yeah, like that's like I still attest that scene is supposed to be funny, and it's supposed to be like the little bit of pressure relief valve of like, ha ha ha. But also, you think about it, this is really fucked up. Guess what? It's gonna get more fucked up.
Yeah, and that also lends a lot of credence to the theory of it being kind of her paranoid sort of her against the world.
Yeah,
like guilt complexes that NIC Spheres talks about, and that are like really. It feels like that is like what the movie is saying, right? Where she's just blaming kind of the whole world for this familial thing, I guess. I don't know. It's really...
I like it because it takes like the horror of it and it reverses it into this idea of like, this is a horrifying idea.
Yeah.
But there's also the horrifying possibility that like this is an idea that a person is holding because that brings them greater comfort. That like what's horrifying isn't just that like the idea that you don't have control over your fate and that all of this stuff was set into motion before you ever had a chance to make a decision, but the idea that like that might be a more comforting prospect to you, that like the world is against me. My mother set these things in motion. Everything that happened, we had no choice in, and there was nothing I could have done to stop it.
Yeah.
And the idea that like that makes it like easier for her is like, that's really scary. And I like, because then that ties into the scene when the kid's in school and you hear the kids talking about some Greek tragedy. And she's like, well, what makes it tragic is the idea that like, you know, they had a choice in the matter, because if they never had a choice, then there's nothing they could have done to stop it. But if there is something they could have done to stop it, then that makes it like worse. And that's right before the scene where the older brother goes to the party. Because it's like he's at school and he's invited to the party and he's told to bring his dick, and then and then so I like that idea of like, hey, this is like the film is sort of an attempt to understand that.
Yeah.
And what makes it horrifying is the idea that like she can embrace this comfort of like, I would rather my whole fucking family die
Then to apologize once.
Then to apologize once and recognize that I forced a situation that made things worse. I would rather my son be possessed by a demon and for my own to cut my own head off.
That's all. That's relatable. Accountability. You know, it's too much to ask, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I also. Can we talk about Bring Your Dick? Like, was it bisexual coding, or was it just like...
I maintain that there had to have been at one point in like the drafting somewhere, oh, the son is bisexual, because in that scene, the texts like right above it are like, hey, I'm gonna go get my bikini zone shaved. Haha, cool, send me pics. So I thought at first it was a girl, and then it's like, no, it's like one of his male friends. And I'm like, so then... Is that what teen boys do? Were they sending each other pictures of their dicks?
Was he like talking to his friend through Grindr? Like, is that the new chat app? Is that the new thing to do? Like,
hashtag bring your dick.
I swear it was like a yellow UI. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know.
No, that was, yeah. Like I remember that scene because it's like, oh, that's weird. He must be talking with the girl in front of him, and then it's like, no, he's talking with his friend, and I'm like, teen boys don't talk about that stuff.
Yeah, like that's. I mean. It's equality.
It's equality.
It's equality. Bless that actor, Alex Wolff. Wonderful job. And bless Toni Collette. Bless Colin Stetson for making a wonderful score.
I love, by the way, that like article where they're talking, like they're interviewing the whole cast, and like they're talking about what's the actor's name who played the son?
Alex Wolff.
Alex Wolff, and they're talking about how like, yeah, he just got really into the character, and the entire time he's on screen, he's like, I'm Peter. I'm Peter. And like they're talking to Toni Collette, and she's just like, yeah, it was annoying.
No, she fucking hates him, and it's so funny. Like there is actual drama. Like if you look it up, like Toni Collette's just like, everyone's just like, oh wow, Alex Wolff, yeah, method acting. Oh, you were just listening to Colin Stetson the whole time. Oh wow. And Toni Collette's just like, yeah, he sure did.
Yeah, he sure was doing that. Yeah, it's almost, like it kind of like we ended up having the same dynamic like we do in the movie.
Doing the goddamn fucking movie.
It's such a great interview with Toni Collette, where she's just trying really hard not to just shit over this like actor who's probably like 20 years her junior.
Yeah.
But she's just like, yeah, it was real fucking annoying.
God, it's so fucking
He
good.
didn't have to do that to give a good I didn't have to do it to give a good performance. Yeah, I don't know why he had to.
I'm not out here pulling some fucking method acting shit, sawing my own head off for the
fucking Millie's over here fucking just like, she's talking about horror movies and shit, and she plays the role fine. She's like 13. I don't know why she's got to be doing.
She's not even trying. She's just watching Alien and eating a bunch of popcorn every night on set. You don't gotta do the Jim Carrey thing, Alex Wolff. Just don't.
I'm
don't.
just saying we had fun. I'm just saying it was a fun.
It was a fun set, a fun shoot. Yeah. I don't know.
Did you? Interview.
What a great interview.
That movie made me really interested in seeing the director's other shorts. And
yeah,
can we talk about how it's got some dark family stuff going on?
Ari Aster has fucking brainworms.
Yeah,
that's like my explanation. I read actually the
Wikipedia page.
I read the synopsis of his other short films. They're insane.
They're literally all about insane, like monstrously like evil family. Not monstrously evil, but like monstrously broken families.
Yes, does he just want to he just wants to give people trauma or just like
no? I think he just has. I think he's just
he has trauma. Like
this is like this just how families be.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like a good fucked up family movie.
I definitely want to read. I definitely want to see his other films. I'm just like, wow, these are. Whew.
Yeah, they sound pretty fucking rough.
For people who is somewhat content warning, like if you go to look them up, one of them is about incest and like generational like rape. And the other one is about Munchausen syndrome.
Yeah, Munchausen is the name of that.
Yeah, by proxy. So one of them, but like the incest one is like the dynamic is reversed to kind of like draw attention to, I guess, the idea that like the idea of like that being a normalized thing that people would look the other way on. They wouldn't do if the dynamic was reversed. And then the other one is just about a mom poisoning her son.
Yeah. For the whole, and then he dies, and then that's the whole thing.
Yeah, dude's got issues, but I mean, same. It's representation.
I love to be just like, what's the word for like, fuck, never mind. I love to be depressed.
Yeah, no, same. I'm constantly telling people like I love watching movies that just upset me. Yeah. I like things that are just upsetting.
Just horrid. We're horrid people. We love horrid things.
I like remember like one time I went down to like Portland with like some friends and stuff, and we were just like high in the woods. And my friend told me the story about it, like, oh yeah, there used to be like these like free bikes that like like we're just around town. People like take them, and like it was like a really cool bike sharing system. And then one day, just this dude like gathered them all up in his truck and threw them in the lake. And I just started laughing so hard. And I was like, that's so awful. But the idea that someone would do that is like that brings me like not joy, but it's like that causes all the neurons in my brain to light up. Just like that's not just like, oh, that guy's a dick. That's like you're like sacrificing a weekend.
Yeah. You gave your time to fuck everyone's life up.
Yeah, to just do so for literally just spite. There's no reason to do it.
Okay, do we have any closing thoughts on Hereditary?
Really, it's such a good movie. I'm excited to rewatch it again.
Yeah,
at some point.
I really want to rewatch it. God, it's
once it hits the second run theater, I'll probably go. Some people who didn't see it the first time.
It's a great movie. It's a frustrating movie. It's a traumatizing movie. It's a inspiring movie.
It's a horrifying movie. Oh, tying into like that the director's like whole thing of hating families. I will say I love that there is a director who, instead of the classic American film trope of like the family unit in horror as being threatened or the family unit as needing to be like resolved and saved, just a director who's out there saying like, hey, fuck families.
Fuck families.
Just fuck. Hey, you know what? The family unit, that's the problem.
Honestly, yeah, the movie did strike me as having like a really astute like grasp on like power dynamics, especially in family situations, and I think that's like mostly what his career is kind of about. So it's really good to know that someone is out there just showing that families are bad.
That we should abolish the family unit.
We abolish, and that is our
that's that's our thoughts on Hereditary.
If you're in a family or looking to start a family, we're coming for you. You're fucking next.
No more family.
No more family.
Focus on the family. Like, focus on destroying the family.
Focus off the family.
But yeah, that's Hereditary. Good movie.
Good movie.
Oh, we gotta do the $12 thing.
Oh, the 12. Oh yeah,
Our $12 bit.
What would we rather have spent $12 on?
I would have rather spent the $12 on like like a really cheap therapy copay.
Oh my god.
Because I feel like I would have gotten the same the same benefits.
Well, that's what you do after Hereditary. So
Yeah.
like Hereditary introduces a lot of therapy sunk costs into your life. So like it's really kind of an investment.
So really just going to therapy in the first place, you're saving yourself like $12 right there.
Yeah. I wouldn't have rather spent my $12 on anything. I'm happy that I got to see an art movie with a bunch of my friends, and we all just completely just shot ourselves in the theater, just screaming. Kind of a group like like a trust fall where you just of like just traumatize you cauterize whatever wounds you have and move forward with your lives.
It's the cigarette game of movies.
Oh god, it really is. Is the cigarette game? Is that a well-known? That has to be a well-known thing.
I hope it's well known. If you Google it, you might find out about it. If not, it's a game where you put a lit cigarette between each other's like two people's arms, and you just see who can withstand it the longest.
Yeah, and that's
Hereditary.
And that's Hereditary, the cigarette game, but for a movie
like 2.5 hours.
But for 2.5 goddamn hours.
All right, so this is Film Critters signing off.
We're signing off. We will see you soon with another video that we're very excited about, and we're about to start writing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm excited. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for subscribing to our content.
Thank you for leave comments below.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Tell us, give us thoughts. What are things you like about our videos?
Yeah.
What are things you think we can improve about our videos?
Right now, I read every single comment.
Same. There's not a lot of them, and the ones that are hateful are really funny.
They're really funny, and then the ones like I just love. I don't know. It's like everybody blows smoke up your ass as a fucking like listener engager of content. It's just nice to see what people are.
Yeah, no, it's
not necessarily thinking of like us, but like what the stuff that we're talking about, like people's interpretations of movies that we've seen.
Yeah, like an example, the Silent Hill one. I was actually really glad to see multiple people like, wow, this actually made me want to go rewatch the movie now that I have a different perspective on it.
That
I'm
was
like,
so cool.
Yeah, like that was cool to see. Like, oh, I'm really glad that like me talking about this film like made you want to see a movie that like pretty much no one has ever been like, I want to rewatch the Silent Hill movie before.
That's accomplishing exactly what I wanted to do, because I really want people to like see that movie, not being aware of the like piles and piles of people on YouTube who are kind of right in saying that it's a piece of shit movie, but like just turn your brain off, have fun.
It's honestly like what the Film Critters Manifesto is the idea of looking at films that don't get looked at enough, or looking at them in a way that they don't get looked at enough, so that people can like be like, hey, maybe this movie isn't that great.
Yeah.
But it still said something about the culture at the time, and that's worth like engaging with.
Or if it didn't say something, it's like a good springboard, or just like if there's a lot of interpretations and blah 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 blah. Like we like having fun over here.
So
So we'll talk to you guys soon.
Bye.
Bye everyone. Follow us on Twitter at a very cute dog at Fussy Baby Bitch.
Fussy Baby Bitch.
ASMR video. ASMR. Okay, fucking all right. I'm hitting stop.
Okay. I like the giant red one for my ASMR bass boosting.